Welcome to the Wooper Club League Season 11 Week 5 Power Rankings. We're starting to get closer and closer to the playoffs. My name is IllLogic. I'm coach of the Buffalo Bouffalant. As always, I'm joined by SteveChuck, coach of the Waterdeep Wobbuffets.
Hey everybody.
And let's hop into it one more time, my people. We are starting out with the match of the week, and it was a close 2-0 victory for the Bouffalant over the Route 1 Burbs. Lantern taken down low early. Bronzone gets up rocks, but misses the Toxic on Volcanion, so it goes down early without doing anything else. Smart Cobalion switching to Sludge Wave, but then Headbutt misses the Nidoqueen, who takes it down with Earth Power. For Ribombee immune to Draco Meteor, that is a momentum shift. Lantern gets chipped onto Thunder, who removes the rocks. Ribombee back in, does half to Pharaoh, who gets up spikes before going down to the Queen. Thundysack next for some trip, Nidoqueen with 3 KOs. Latios into Revenge, no Tailwind to let Volcanion in. Lantern and Ribombee stall that out, but after some chip, Ribombee goes down too. Rock'em Sock, get it. EQ is spammable now, takes down Volcanion, does about half to Latios, tanks the Draco, and another 54% to Primarina before going down itself. What a baller. Cart can clean up though from here, knock the Lati, sack Nidoqueen to Prim, and Cart back in to finish it up. Moving right along, the Newport Noctowls do not mess around against the New Britain Rockruff. That is a solid 3-0 win. The Rotoms get chipped early, pivoting around each other. Weavile chipped to remove lefties, but Fan generously gives its Scarf to the Washing Machine. Some brotherly love right there. Jirachi trying to pivot in, but Cinderace is making that tough. On the other side, Glowking trying to set up Iron Defenses, going even with Jirachi before getting a burn on it. Weezing has Clear Smog to remove the boost, but Rotom Fan needs to be sacked to the Glowking. Weavile takes down the other Rotom quickly as well, but now it's Garchomp's turn to set up. KOs the Weezing, but Weavile forces that out too. A risky Sword Stance in front of Sylveon, which does remove its item, and that's a Hyper Voice to KO it. And that's a Soundproof Komodo. And on the switch out, that's in Dragon Dance. Oh no, I see what's going on here. That +1/+1 boost is all it needed with Rotom down. 5 KOs to Komodo to complete the 3-5 comeback, 3-0. Next up, a battle of 3-1 teams. These Steamrollers are the ones to come out ahead of the Agrons, a convincing 5-0 victory. Kyurem is out first. Where are your switch-ins? Tang can at least break the sub, but Coco takes 92% for its troubles. Nice switch into Lando on a Bolt Strike, gives Chad rocks for free, and not interested in the Golurk sweep, sets up Reflect as well with the Regieleki. Kyurem does take some chip, and the Agrons get rocks up too, but there are a lot of boots in this matchup. Moltres gets Toxic, but it gets a big Scorching Sands on a Victini, who just can't find the chance to click V-Crate. Then Disaster. Lando outspeeds Coco without a Scarf. What is you doing, Coco? That's the first KO on the board. That's no more Defog. That's a Victini sack to rocks. It's spiraling out of control, especially when Golurk gets Toxic. Scizor refuses to hit itself in Dynamic Punch-induced confusion and heals up with Roost every turn before Noct takes care of that. It's getting bad now. Now Moltres gets an easy KO into Skarm, and then another onto Vaporeon just to let Tangrowth regenerate some health, but it does help Tang survive a Flamethrower. Gets the lone Agron's KO, but it's a simple freezer afterwards to seal the relatively easily 5-0. The Close Combat Club make yet another 3-1 team win. This one, another 6-0 for him, this time over the Summit County Psyducks. Don't know if you're aware, but Blissey wall special attackers like Zapdos, and the Corviknight is scaring out the Metagross every time as well. Add in that Vortex, and the Tapu Lele and Barraskewda doing silly damage. You've got the gist of the game. Lots of pivoting. There were 3 straight turns of just pivoting between the two coaches with occasional breaks for Stealth Rock or Spikes. Zapdos stays in on Blissey just long enough to get poisoned and let Blissey heal up. Not ideal. Quillfish is the wall for Urshifu. The club just has all the answers. Zarude whittled down and goes down to Helmet from Quillfish. That makes Silea Psychic much more spammable, and down goes Neoligo. Some more pivoting around. Corv walling Metagross, pivoting into Lele, who does take down Urshifu. Now Blaziken gets free Flare Blitzes into Metagross and Zapdos, with Excelgor the last one left. Blissey cleans that up. Easy. A 6-0 win with just the perfect answers to the opponent's questions, or Pokemon, I forgot what we're playing. Anyways, if you have a short attention span, this one's the match for you. 9 turns, 6 KOs from Terrakion, a 6-0 sweep of the Troopers by a newly resurgent Waterdeep Wobbuffets. Turn 1, Rock Polish on the switch to Celesteela. Turn 2, Swords Dance on the EQ, Witch Procs Weakness Policy. Those are in fact the stats you see on the screen right now. After a Protect, it's just a matter of hitting the Stone Edge against Dragonite and Gengar, who won't go down to CC. Yep, those hit. The rest taken care of by the Fighting Stab. Quick and efficient, 6-0. Relatively straightforward stuff so far, but hold up. The Boulders drop a crucial game. The Lairon picking up their first W of the season in a quick but thrilling 2-0 match. Cowardice on turn 1. The Scarf plus F1 hard switches out of Dragapult. Shame, especially as the Bolt just U-turned out. Turn 2, Hippo gets Toxic, but the Heavy Slam surprise to Oko, the Ninetales. With 2 Hail Sweepers is the only chance to get this match. Drifblim is sacked to Blizzard from Arctozolt. Liepard sets up the Sun and survives on 1 HP. Hippo back out, tanks a hit. Blizzard misses. Hippo heals up. Blizzard misses again. And Heavy Slam and Sandstorm take down the Zolt. Hippo even survives a Nidoking Surf to take that down too, but what a beast. But Beartick is out next. Ice Cold Crash KOs that, then Rillaboom revenges. No, it don't. Getting greedy with the SD. What is you doing, baby? Rillaboom goes down without doing a thing. Liepard on 1% sets up Sun again and goes down 2. Beartick competing for the best 20-point mon this season. Bouffalant gets a KO with Overheat, but Archeop's got that Scarf. Knock off the Heliolisk Scarf. Another one gets the KO, and then Bouffalant back in, goes down to another knock. Another quick battle in the books, the 2-0. Finally, the comeback season is still alive. The Cincinnati Incineroar grab a 4-0 win over the Kanto Kinglers. It starts out rough. Inteleon OHKOs the Kingler turn 1. You hate to see that. Life Orb Ditto, that's kind of neat, but Inteleon is starting to rip through the team a little bit. Ditto wins the speed tie and finally takes care of it. Salamence gets a free Draco or 2, bringing Lando and Kingdra down low alongside the Pelipper and Ditto. Ditto smartly transforming into Chansey to heal itself up a bit. It's a Chansey v Clefable matchup that nobody wanted to see. Salamence, Draco, Seismitoad low, and even at -2 KOs the Pelipper. Everything is low for the Kinglers. On the last hurrah and rain, Toad does take down the Salamence, but lots of good stalling from the Incineroar to outlast the rain, run it out, and Clef is back in to take some names. Moonblast the Toad, dodge the Iron Tail to Moonblast the Lando, out-trade the Ditto, KO that too, and then Kingdra doesn't stand a chance. 4-0 to the Incineroar, and that is what happened in Week 5. Now, we do have one trade to go over here, and that is my opponent for this week. The Route 1 Burbs made 2 transactions here, trying to look a little bit more like the Season 8 Bouffalant with these 2 trades here, Steve.
Yeah. So the Burbs here trading away Durant and Necrozma, picking up Cobalion and Thundurus Incarnate. Necrozma was a kind of a late pickup for them that they plan to fix with trades eventually. It kind of had a lot of overlap with Latias, both of them being kind of bulkier psychic types and really were compiling there. In the end, decided to drop the late add Necrozma along with the Durant to upgrade the Durant and downgrade the Necrozma, picking up some additional utility for their team. The hitting power of Thundurus, the Cobalion, which is a great pivot, as well as defensive piece and fast as well. Just trying to diversify their team a little bit and pick up some useful mons.
Yeah, I really like the transactions overall. Still is able to keep a good steel type there. Obviously, has Ferrothorn already, but Durant was just something I think the Burbs were just not comfortable with bringing too often because of Hustle. Yes, it has a lot of power, but you're able to keep the steel type, keep the similar, at least, offensive profile while adding a defensive profile and keeping the speed. Also able to keep the Rock Setter, too, because you're getting rid of the Necrozma and picking up a Defogger with Thundurus. I really only see Latias, the only real hazard remover on the team otherwise, so it's another role there, too. I know he's been a little bit heavy on the electric offense, but hey, if electric is good in a matchup, it's real good in a matchup, and being able to stack that with Thundy is nice. Also able to keep a little bit of setup prowess there. It seems like a relatively good trade to me. So now we get into the rankings, and here we go. We've got a few shakeups. We had, if you recall, 6 teams last time that were at 3-1. We now are at 4 teams at 4-1. The 1 through 4 teams here in the rankings. Congrats to all of them for clinching a winning season, but it's not over yet. We have a lot of interesting playoff scenarios that I'm sure we'll get into next week, because right now it's still just too close to call for so many of these. Speaking of close, though, I guess we should talk about the rankings themselves and why we ordered them the way we did. We're going to start off, of course, with those first 2 teams, the Bouffalant and the Noctowl, who for the past couple of weeks have seemed way ahead of everyone else. The Bouffalant and Noctowl picking up key wins against 2-2 teams. We'll start with the Bouffalant win over the Burbs. This is the feature match. We don't need to get too much into it. But maybe a little fortunate with a Cobalion Zen Headbutt miss, but I feel like I was able to maneuver the game pretty well overall here.
Yeah, you were definitely able to kind of maintain the pivoting, keep momentum up, and then take out key threats such that in the end game, Kartana was able to do what it needed to, and claim KOs and show up as that dominant force you've been advocating for.
Absolutely. I feel like I was scared I was overhyping the Kartana, especially as it's performed the first couple of weeks, but currently sitting atop the leaderboard just ahead of Clefable overall for KOs. Another big shout out, I think, to Nidoqueen, who isn't atop the KO leaderboard quite yet. But over the past couple of weeks, plus against our match with you, Steve, Nidoqueen has done just an awesome job ripping holes in the opponent's teams, especially early, just able to pick up 3 KOs here, but it's more so about, as you said, the ability to break things down, and kind of the role that everything was able to. Nidoqueen broke things down for others, or Bombi broke things down, which let Sock clean up a little bit, which also broke things down for the Kartana. it seemed like my team overall was able to flow pretty darn well, even without bringing Tornadus or Hydreigon or Swampert or Arcanine this week.
Yeah, you mentioned it. You shouted out that Nidoqueen, and I'll shout it out again, and also throw in the Laron's Nidoking. Both of these Pokemon have been doing a fantastic job this season of coming in on slower threats and breaking down their checks, making the opponent play guessing games on the switch-in with just their fantastic move pool, especially on that special side. Neither of them really have had bad matchups that they've come to, and with this higher point limit, neither of them are key members of their team. They're kind of, that borderline 6th, 7th optional mon that, can come when it's a good matchup and doesn't have to otherwise. So I think a Pokemon that really benefited from the higher point limits and kind of the additional freedom that allowed.
It's kind of interesting to see a lot of the 140s, 120s kind of getting a lot of the spotlight here in these higher point totals. Everybody has a 200 and a 180 almost, and it seems like it's that next tier down that is kind of separating a lot of the teams here. However, for the Noctowls, it was in this match. It looks like mostly the Weavile be able to once again break things down a little bit and threaten out the big setup sweepers, the Garchomp and the Gloking that the Rockruff have kind of predictably brought every week, as well as of course the Komodo cleaning it up at the end. Finally, we get to see Komodo do something in our league. This was exciting.
Yeah, you said it. This is the first time Komodo has really done much of anything. This is, I think, maybe the first draft it's ever been picked up in. We keep moving it down and we're removing restrictions regarding Clangor Soul, although we have not seen Clangor Soul be used usefully yet. But coming in here, being able to identify the Sylveon clicking Hyper Voice as a free chance to come in and set up, and at that point, tear through this whole team. Would have been really exciting to see that Hyper Voice being a bait. Sylveon bringing both Hyper Voice and Moonblast just to catch the Komodo sleeping, but that was not the case, and Komodo showing why it is such a good Pokemon. Hopefully, we can see some more from it in future weeks.
Kind of interesting you didn't end up bringing the Volcarona this week, but I want to highlight the Weavile again. This is just a classic mon for the Noctowls. They, I believe, have used it multiple times already. Definitely used it successfully in the multi-battle season when we were co-champions there. It very much fits the playstyle, something that tends to be faster than everything else out there. The type coverage, even just from the stabs, is phenomenal. Even just being able to get a knockoff onto something to ensure something else can work. The Weavile putting in a ton of work for the Noctowls overall here.
Yeah. On the other side, the Gloking putting in tons of work as always for the Rockruff, pivoting in throughout and trying to set up. We've seen it now very frequently coming in and setting up an Iron Defense or a Calm Mind. Very clear that the Rockruff are kind of favoring that as a win condition always. It can always come in there, set up, and sweep given the right conditions. So excited to see if that continues to be the game plan going forward, or if we'll see something different out of the Gloking.
And if you'll recall, this was their first pick, I believe, in the draft down at 140 points. We just moved it up 2 tiers, and it was still the first pick for them. And if they continue to use it in this kind of way, and if they continue to use it effectively, I think we kind of understand why. I'm sure we'll talk about the Burbs and the Rockruff a little bit later at the end of the power rankings here. But we also kind of identified the Bouffalant and Noctowls as a step ahead. Once again, we have the Bouffalant slightly ahead of the Noctowls, but these two teams just seem to be another level ahead of the others at this point, both 4-1 and poised to meet each other in the final week.
Yeah, the top two teams coming in, and then just in the way they've handled their opponents and, some of the stronger opponents they've had to go up against, both have handled their situations well, only losing to, the same team, my team, but outside of that, perfect games, maintaining control, and really dominating those matchups. Just based kind of on the slight edge and the slightly better job that the Bouffalant did this week, we kept in that number 1 spot. The Noctowl seem to be a little bit bailed out by the team building of the Rockruff, bringing Soundproof, of course, to kind of force the Sylveon to run Moonblast. However, the Rockruff missed that and, gave away that 5-3 lead they had worked so hard for.
It's been kind of nice to see a cute Charm Proc on there to see that it was not Pixelate and had Moonblast, but unfortunately we did not get that. There are still two other teams that work their way up to 4-1. Next one we have to talk about, it's the Steamrollers. They lost week 1 to the Bouffalant, but wow, the 4-game winning streak for them. They're looking better than ever with their big win over the Agrons, currently facing off against each other, if these power rankings were true, for the playoffs. Kiram, a great identification showing how much work that put in. Really enjoyed seeing Landorus and Scissor able to sit in front of things. Even Moltres got in on the action. This was just very clean against a good team.
Yeah, this is a statement win for the Steamrollers. Previously we had complained that they had one loss to a good team and then 3 wins over teams outside of our top 8. They finally got another win, and a solid win at that too, over a key opponent. Really making sure they're solidifying their place up here in the top 4, giving them the edge here into number 3. Having a fantastic match. Kiram, providing the great offense, forcing the switches, and just playing smart, pivoting as they need to, taking the smart attacks, and never overextending and forcing a win condition, just slowly whittling down the opposing team until they just ran out of answers.
Of course, we can't fault Chad for not having particularly difficult matchups aside from week 1, but as he said, he finally gets a chance to shine, and boy did he. This was overall a totally complete game all the way around. We didn't even get to see the Keldeo come out, which actually looks like that had a fantastic matchup too, especially when the Coco went down early. On the other side, I wonder how worried we should be about the Aggron starting 3-0 and then dropping a couple of games in a row here. Especially a couple of the small mistakes there, right? The Victini never got to fire off V-Create. Look how it looks into this team. Everything aside from the Moltres gets kind of obliterated by that. And Coco as well, not having enough speed for Lando. How concerned do you think we should be about the Agrons moving forward?
I would say we should be pretty decently concerned with them. Coco wasn't the only team building issue. There was a small issue with the Skarmory. Kept coming in on rocks with leftovers, and then after 2 ticks, kept healing up, 1 HP or 2 HP short of 100%, not proccing Sturdy. There were a couple times where it sounded like Joy would think about staying in against Moltres with the Skarmory, if only he had Sturdy to fall back on. But, just based on the HP numbers, didn't get that tick back to 100%. Their schedule looking forward, they got a match this upcoming week against the Close Combat Club, which will be a huge match for them. Very important, that they get that win to kind of guarantee a spot. And then, week 7 against the Incineroar, their comeback season's still alive. And, the Incineroar, we'll talk about them later, but they do have one of the best chances to kind of break into that 8th spot, which is a little open right now. So, both of those being key matches, I'm definitely worried for them, especially as we get towards the playoffs where they have traditionally struggled. But, as of now, they're hanging on, and hopefully they can make it.
And speaking of their week 6 opponents, the Close Combat Club, and it's another similar story to the Steamrollers. A very convincing win, 6-0, also against the Psyducks, who I believe the Steamrollers were able to defeat the previous week. But overall, the quality of opponents, not quite there for the Combat Club either. Obviously, both teams are 4-1, and big congratulations to them. But the two biggest tests that they've both faced didn't really succeed at. They've been able to clean up everyone else very well, which means, of course, they are deserving of playoffs. The Close Combat Club, especially here, the last 2 weeks, they've lost 0 Pokemon. That can't be right. That's actually kind of insane. But this is exactly the kind of game that John plays. He's able to find the exact same perfect counters or pivots and says, okay, every time you go to this mon, I'm going to this, and it will be safe and it will work. And boy, did it work yet again this time.
Oh, yeah. Blissey always coming in on the special attackers, Zapdos. Just walling that, Corviknight coming in on the Metagross, Quillfish coming on the Urshifu, always has the dedicated answer, and, just comes in against the opponent's attackers, pivots when they get the chance, and then, sends out the Lele or Barraskewda for the big damage. Blaziken also in the end kind of cleaning up. Well-constructed team, relying on the Corviknight Blissey core that Chad had previously championed. And it's really showing what it can do again. Maybe in the future people will kind of realize how key these defensive pieces are, or maybe we'll just figure out how to break them eventually. A nice physical electric or fire move would do the trick, but those aren't the most common things to find.
Absolutely true. I definitely want to highlight the Barraskewda and Lele again. Overall, the game plan does look relatively simple. As I said, you go into the Quillfish every time on the Urshifu, you go into the Blissey every time on Zapdos. But it's the follow-up to actually make progress after that I think has really mattered. Not just being able to set down spikes with Quillfish or Toxic with Blissey, which are definitely helpful and they definitely make progress, but the ability to then go out appropriately from a slow U-turn or a teleport out into the Barraskewda or Lele and use them effectively as breakers. This just screams John. This screams classic Close Combat Club. He's playing it so well right now. Again, 2 weeks in a row without dropping any mons at all.
Yeah. Big 2 weeks. Definitely kind of making up for 3 weeks ago getting 6-0'd by the Noctowls. But, big wins against teams that aren't doing so hot this season. I'm very excited to see how the club close out the season here. This upcoming week, they got a match against the Agrons, and then follow that up week 7 against the Wobbuffets. Both of these teams making it into our top 8. It'll be very exciting to see how the club compares to these teams, and if they keep hanging on to that top 4, or if they maybe slip into the bottom half. But regardless, I would say, their position in the top 8 in playoffs looks very safe.
And, of course, we have to talk about the Steelers and Close Combat Club again. We touched a little bit on the 1 and 2 and how they may be a little separated, but the 3 and 4, even at 4 and 1, they're doing quite well themselves. Talk to us a little bit about the Steamrollers being ahead of the club and what you see moving forward from them.
It really just comes down to strength of schedule in this last week. The Close Combat Club, we mentioned they had the RNG win against the Rockruff and wins against teams outside the top 8, and a big loss to the Noctowls, the number 2 team. Meanwhile, the Steamrollers, similar wins. They have a lot closer wins against the teams outside the top 8, but they have a lot closer win also against the number 1 Bouffalant, and they have now kind of a statement win over another top 8 team in the Agron. That closer loss against top opponents and win over a top opponent kind of indicated us the edge to go to the Steamrollers. So they're heading up here at the number 3.
And 2 teams just on the up and up. Speaking of, I don't know if we were ready to quite pronounce you dead the previous week after losing 2 in a row, but a 9-turn win for the Wobbuffets over the Troopers. Reminder that just 2 weeks ago the Troopers were just about the top of our list, undefeated, and now they're down here at 7. Similar story with the Agrons, both of them 3-0, but slipping down to 3-2. Steve, I don't think there's too much to talk about with your match, but enlighten us about any insight you may have over a 9-turn victory over what was a top team.
Well, I'll say I was inspired by your previous match and what Cartana was able to do. I did like Terrakion in this matchup, and noted make sure I get speed boost so that I am safe from any Scarfers. And even at +2 attack, I would do pretty much enough to anything. Ran the weakness policy or the sword stance, so either one could be achieved. Either way, ended up proccing both of them. Also, Terrakion's bulk is decent enough, and that there wasn't anything I was really worried about on the Troopers that would do super effective damage and KO me right away. Mostly like coverage moves like a Dazzling Gleam from the Gengar. Even things like the Heavy Slam from Celesteela wouldn't do quite enough. Earthquake from the Tyranitar Celesteela, Aura Sphere from the Raikou. Just a bunch of coverage moves that, not those stab moves from Breakers. So Terrakion, really fantastic spot to proc that weakness policy, get the speed boost, and then, tear through the team, assuming I hit some Stone Edges.
And, of course, as you said last week, the Troopers fell to about the same thing, 2 straight 6-0 losses for them, and it seems that the league may have finally figured them out as well. We have the 5 through 7 are all of the 3 and 2 teams. I didn't think anyone was quite good enough to peek into that top 4. We talked about how good even the Close Combat Club has been, but fresh off of a win, especially a 6-0 win, and including a couple of wins against the top 2 teams, Steve, it's tough to have you down below the top of your own ranking here in the 5 through 7. So we did put you at 5, and after a couple of Troopers losses, put them down at 7, and the Agron slotting in the middle at 6. Talk to us a little bit about those 3 placements.
Yeah, we mentioned my key wins, which kind of really indicated pushing up to the top of us 3, especially also grabbing the 6-0 win against the Troopers this week. Really indicated that the Wobbuffet should be placed above the Troopers on this list. For the Agrons, you mentioned the Agrons and Troopers both kind of have been falling since their 3-0 starts. The Agrons haven't been falling as hard. So, we kind of gave them the edge as the Troopers, suffering 2 6-0 losses. They're in a little bit steeper of a fall. Both of them can, of course, recover. The Troopers have a key game this upcoming week against the Boldors, plus, a week against the Psyducks. So, really manageable schedule for the rest of the season, able to, get back here and make sure they stabilize within the top 8 for playoffs. The Agrons, a similar schedule going up against the Close Combat Club, which will be a huge match facing, another of these top teams. And, hopefully if the Agrons are able to win that definitely, shows them as not deserving of falling as much as they have. And then the Incineroar to close out the season. So, lots of chances for both of these teams. But that's how we ranked them right now.
And I think, as we said a couple of weeks ago, they were 3-0, but they really hadn't faced too big of a test. Frankly, it looks like they're both failing right now. So we do have still a couple of weeks to get back in it. And starting with 3 wins, I know there are going to be a lot of competition to try and get the last playoff spot, but just getting one more W in there could be huge for them. And then finally, we have just a bevy of 2 and 3 teams down below them. We have a couple of matches we want to go over real quick that we didn't include the teams in. We're going to start with the Boulder Boulders falling to Lorraine Laron. Congrats to the Laron for getting their first win. They've just looked better and better every week, and this is finally the one where they were able to break out. Yes, we identified a couple of potential chokes from the Boulders. Turn 1, not staying in with the Blacephalon, and of course Rillaboom being a little greedy, but honestly, the Beartick put in a ton of work. The Scarfire Caps was a perfect play, and having Dragapult in the back was made me feel really secure that they were able to get the win.
Yeah, the Laron have, kept a lot of these games close. Every week it seems like the Laron, are a couple turns behind, a couple turns out, and finally picking up that win, getting, a key upset late in the season, keeping their playoff hopes alive with this, not mathematically eliminated now, able to make it in even at 3 and 4 at best. So really strong performance, and little preview of week 6, but they have made a lot of trades to try and really make this final push. So hopefully it works out for them.
And unfortunately for the Boulders, this was one of the 2 games that we really needed them to win, that looked secure, and why we had placed them up in the power rankings last week. They still do have the Troopers and the Kinglers left, which are definitely very winnable games, but boy, was this a bit of a blow to them for our purposes in ranking, which, again, we'll get to in just a moment. But there's another team that we haven't talked about yet that got a W that moved up to 2 and 3. That's the Cincinnati Incineroar, keeping their hopes alive. It seems to mostly be behind Clefable, but honestly, even though they revamped their team, it was some of the old faces in a sort of new style that helped a lot too. The Inteleon and Salamence really able to break apart the Kinglers this time.
Yeah, the Incineroar definitely showing that they can win matches and dominate. And of course, Clefable has been key. Some teams have beat them by shutting down Clefable or just outlasting them. But if they're able to keep this work with Clefable up and the rest of the team around it, they could sneak in. Of the 2 and 3 teams, I believe mathematically they have the best chance of making it in, although it is very close.
Incredibly close. In fact, there are 4 teams that are at 2 and 3. Steve, we picked the Route 1 Burbs, who are fresh off of a loss, to move up into the rankings, whereas we dropped the Boulder Boulders and the New Britain Rockruff down and did not include the only 2 and 3 team to pick up a win, and that being the Cincinnati Incineroar. We talked about this a lot, and these 4 teams are so close. But tell us a little bit about why we picked the Burbs out of this group to round out our power rankings.
I mean, as always, it comes down to kind of feelings based on strength of schedule. The Incineroar here, for example, they did pick up a win this week, but it's against the 0-5 Kinglers. While a win is a win and will definitely help them out, it's not quite as impressive. Even a 6-0 win would not be quite as impressive just based on the rough season the Kinglers have been having. For the Rockruff, they have really had some on and off spats with RNG. Really rough season with regards to that. They have picked up some nice wins. However, the Psyducks currently outside the top 8 and the Agrons, on the lower half of the top 8. Meanwhile, losing to, RNG based in the club and being walled by Clefable for the Incineroar, losing to the Noctowls. We just really didn't see enough. Plus, they also have a tough schedule remaining. The Steamrollers, having a fantastic season, and then the Larons staying alive here at 1-4 currently. That could be a big Week 7 matchup there. And then for the Bulldoors, we kind of already talked about it. They really needed this win to solidify things. We felt really good about them, getting to that 4-3 position at the very least, maybe 5-2. And then this loss to this previous winless Laron really took all the wind out of that sail. Now they need, the wins over the Troopers, the win over the Kinglers, and maybe, RNG and tiebreakers there, differential to really help out in the 4-3 finals, depending on how people end up there. And the Troopers, of course, definitely no slouch. So that is a huge matchup for this next week for both teams.
And then we ended up with the Route 1 Burbs there. Yes, it was a loss this past week, but it was very close. And honestly, as you've said, we just feel probably a little better about their outlook moving forward. I'm not sure what their schedule is, but I really do feel like they've shown have the best performance so far out of these teams. Or maybe a little bit unlucky earlier in the season, kind of getting everything together. Even this past week, you could potentially argue was a bit RNG related too against the Bouffalant. The Burbs, I think, more so than the other teams, have what it takes to move up. And speaking of that, we do, of course, need to get to the Week 6 schedule matchup. Steve, there are a couple matches that really stand out here. What are you looking at? What are you looking forward to most in Week 6?
I mean, I've talked about it. I feel like 3 times in my discussions, but the match between the Boulders and the Wooper Troopers really key for both of these team playoff hopes. The Boulders, really like this win to have a good chance of making the playoffs. Otherwise, things are looking pretty bad for them. On the other hand, the Troopers, have a little bit of a more favorable position going in, having that one extra win. But they're also kind of on a downward spiral, and a win would do a lot to kind of stabilize the mental for there and really help out. So that pops out as a really key matchup. The other one I'll shout out is the Close Combat Club and the Agrons. 2 teams within the top 8, bottom of our top 4 and the number 6. This is the chance, again, similar to the Troopers, chance for the Agrons to show they aren't free falling and that they have what it takes to get a win against one of these top teams. And the club, chance to win against one of the top teams and maybe move up to the number 3 with a good enough win over the Agrons.
And similarly, I want to highlight those other couple of 2 and 3 teams. The Burbs and the Psyducks looks like maybe an easier win for the Burbs. So I guess I'd like to highlight the Rockruff and the Incineroar going up against the Steamrollers and Noctels. Those are very tough matchups, and those are teams that, yes, they're at 4-1, but they're not resting on anything yet. Every win can count, as you've said. There are a lot of interesting and bizarre 4-3 tiebreakers. Getting a 5th win would be absolutely huge for each of these teams. So the Incineroar and Rockruff have to come out swinging in order to try and get an upset win and to keep their playoff hopes alive, because otherwise it's starting to look pretty grim for them. That's going to do it for us. Week 6 is maybe one of my favorite ones that we get to do because we get to look at playoff odds and chances. So you need to come and join us as we go over Week 6 next time. And only 7 weeks in the season, we are closing in on playoffs. We'll see you then.